Greetings YouTube and welcome to the Blue Corner, and we're doing a special Cardfight Vanguard deck profile in this video, as you can tell by the title here, and that is, I've got here a proxied Narukami deck for standard format, and I wanted to share with you guys what I've been doing with this so far. So, as far as this deck is concerned, standard format, it's performing quite decently. It's a low tier 1, high tier 2 deck, which matches up favorably into Protect clans, such as Oracle Think Tank, Angel Feather. Angels are a bit more of a difficult matchup, but it is winnable. I think it's either 50-50 or like 55-45. It's pretty close, but I think if the Nara player is the better of the two, they should be able to pull it out, and I do believe we match up very well into Oracle Think Tank. And given that those two decks pretty much take up 50% of the playing field at a given tournament, you have a pretty good chance of, well, just getting a good matchup in general. Your force matchups, particularly Neo Nectar and Royal Paladin, are a bit more on the iffy side, but I do believe you'll be playing, again, more Oracle Think Tank and Angel Feather than you will the other two. So I think you just accept those L's and just say, fuck it, let's try and, match up well into the meta. As far as your matchups against other clans, such as Murakumo, Shadow Paladin, and such forth, I think the Murakumo matchup is a bit dicey. I think you might be able to do it. Depends on what you ride. Like, if you get stuck on Stinger Dragon, then that could be a big oof. But, I mean, that's a matchup where I guess Vermilion would be useful if you're playing Vermilion, but truth be told, Murakumo is starting to dip a little bit, so you might not have to worry about it too much. In Great Nature, well, that's a deck where you probably would wish you had Vermilion, but depends if you're playing it or not. Spoiler alert, I'm not. And as far as Gold Paladin goes, they're still bad. Don't worry about them. Same for Nubatama. Like, you crushed that deck, so it's whatever. And yeah, oh yeah, Shadow Paladin. That one's interesting. If you can get Phoenixes into circulation, then you have a much better time against them because you'll always be able to recur a board. But if you can't see Phoenix, then it could also be a bit on the iffy side. So with that being said, let's get started. So for the starter, I have Spark-Cage Dragoon here. Just pretend this is the new one where you on-ride draw card. Then for the grade 3s, 4 copies of Dactonic's Drill Dragon, your main VR boss card, and the undeniable 4 of Staple that I've seen so far. Like, I've been testing this IRL, CFA, and also both watching people play it on YouTube, talking to people in Discord, and looking at these tournament results, and generally speaking, 4 Drill Dragon is the way to go. Some people out there will try and tell you to only play, well, not 4, but let me tell you, that is very, very, very wrong. And the reason why you play 4 of this card, aside from being your best grade 3, is that this deck does really well going first against Protect. I don't know if you might have noticed that yet, but I've kind of mentioned we match up favorably into Protect, and this is one of the reasons why. In the early game stages, such as grades 1, 2, 3, your opponent doesn't really call much to the field because they don't want to get their cards sniped by your bind effects, which makes it a lot easier to pay the cost for Drill Dragon's restand skill, which, by the way, is on attack discard. Someone tried to tell me otherwise, but no, it was rolled differently. So anyway, on attack, counter +1, bind something in the front row, discard cards equal to your opponent's remaining rear guards, and then you get to stand this unit and it gets +5 and -1 drive. Unconditional restander, it's a great pressure unit, and if you combine it with Stinger Dragon, you can potentially just kill your opponent depending on what kind of damage level they're at in their hand size. The fact that this guy is able to enable binds in battle phase allows you to do some neat tricks with Phoenix, which is a kill play against your opponent when they're at 5 damage. And yeah, he's pretty okay. Like, admittedly speaking, against decks that are able to make a board such as Neo's and Royal Paladin, this guy becomes less powerful. In that case, you would switch to your Drill Dragon and try and wait for an opportunity to use this. But going first, early game, this card is a beast, and it is able to dig for more triggers to try and put your opponent away even quicker. Like, the sooner you can get your opponent to 3 damage is when this card becomes a bit more of a threat. And I am playing a number of crits in here, so to make this guy not completely no-guardable. Like, if you no-guard this, I may still very much flip a crit on you and kill you, but yeah, this pretty strong. Yes, I know, I keep flipping my cards around like that. That probably annoys people. Yeah, you play 4 Sting. You play 4 Drill. Also playing 4 Stinger. This is a good setup card. Ride it, call it, kill something in the front row, and then when you ride over it, you call them out and buff your Vanguard by 10, and then do the kill at the end. So it's a nice easy removal, and it's an okay ride. Admittedly, you don't want to get Zombaku to lock on this thing, but we have hopefully this guy, and I guess Vermilion too if you want to go that route. But yeah, Stinger Dragon is also pretty good. Like people are up in the air as far as this goes, but I feel like a lot of people slept on this at first, but now he's been like become like one of the unsung heroes of the deck. He's okay. He's pretty strong. And yeah, so there's that. And then last grade 3s, you generally see really only 1 of 2 cards played in this slot. You've got Vermilion if you're in a more Axel heavy format, which I'm not, and you have well, Duress Clapdragon, which I am playing. I thought about either him or Tempestuous Domineering Wyvern. This is the other card you can play as your flex spot. Like the untypical Narukami decklist has room for 1 or 2 flex spots, depending on how many grade 1s you play. I'm playing 11 grade 1, so I have 2 flex spots, and I'm going with Duress Clapdragon for the time being. On call, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and swap its positions in the column if possible. No, you move it to an open rearguard circle in the same column to it if possible. Either way, he gets +5 for the turn. It's just a free Ricky that on 1 unit that he gets bigger on. Like, it's a 17 or 27 attacker, which is good if you just need to pull something up to the front row to make Drill Dragon's discard cost much less. But if you have a meta in which you have more Gold Paladin in Great Nature being played, then you'll probably play Vermilion in the spot instead. But since I don't have to worry about that at the time being, I'm not playing it. Then for the grade 2s, 4 Death Scythe, 4 Recklessness, and 4 Thunderstorm Dragoon. So Thunderstorm Dragoon is probably the one that people will have some contention with because Dusty Plasma Dragon makes bigger numbers. However, Dusty Plasma Dragon also requires some setup. In addition to that, the thing that at least tips the scales to Thunderstorm Dragoon for me is that he is unconditional. You just have to have your opponent with 1 or less rear guards in front row, which in the early game is pretty much always the case. Which means that if you are in early game, you can use this with like any booster to rush your opponent down that much sooner, as opposed to Dusty Plasma Dragon being able to make a 17 column, which against your opponent's 9k is not much of a threat. Granted, this is only 22 against a 9, so your opponent can still use a 15 to block it, but it's a 15 to block this as opposed to yeah, Dusty Plasma Dragon and this being only a 10 to block, which like you try and you take whatever you can get. In addition to that, this with a Demolition Dragon behind it hits for 25 unconditionally, which is enough to, especially in early game, that means your opponent needs to have the heal trigger in order to block it. So it's a good number against Force Vanguards too. It's an easy 24 on Axel. Same for Dusty Plasma if you also manage to get his skill off on an Axel. The thing I've noticed is that you don't really have rearguard boosters that frequently unless you open up particularly well. It's really just Phoenix and the odd Demolition or Ricky that you're able to get out, but you sometimes will hold those in hand for discards or to just a guard with. So just being able to throw this guy in front row and swing in an Axel and swing for 24s for 80Ds. And then as far as the other guys go, yeah, these are both really good. You max out on them. This is on Vanguard rearguard kill. It's also a 22 on rear, not 22. It's a 12 on rearguard, and it's a 22 on Axel, and 23 if you have a Demolition behind it. And this guy, you're using him more as the beat stick effect as opposed to the on-play Soul Blast to bind one effect. That skill is okay, and if you have 1 counterblast for the turn and you want to get the Drill Dragon off, then you would call Death Scythe instead of this in order to clear up the front row. But generally speaking, you're using this to be a 24 attacker on the Axel circle, because that is the one spot where your opponent will almost always never have something across from it, unless you're in an Axel mirror and your opponent rode 2 Axel grade 3s. So yeah, not much else to say. Like I'm just playing the good cards so far. Speaking of good cards, Phoenix. I've actually seen people play less than 4, and I've seen people actually argue for playing less than 4 of this, to which I say, you're all fucking nuts. This card is ridiculous. You max out on Phoenix. It is literally the best grade 1 in this deck. You can, let's see here, you can call it down early and use it to poke your opponent. They either attack it and you don't care because it just comes back, or they leave it be because they know it's going to come back, in which you just keep poking with this thing. You can discard it for Perfect Cards, discard it for Drill Dragon, you can ride it and Soul Blast it out for Ricky, you can guard with it. You damage it, you can heal it off. Seriously, why would you play less than 4 of the best grade 1 in your deck that enables a lot of your derp shenanigans? You can call it in battle phase off of Drill Dragon's bind skill and throw it on the Axel Circle for a 21 swing. If your opponent's on a defensive trigger, then you throw it behind the Vanguard or your rear guard so that you can make those lines hit for higher numbers. If you're playing fronts, then this thing becomes even better. If your opponent's at 4 or 5 damage, you can multi-attack and, well, kill them with pokes. Seriously. Max out on this. You will not regret it. Speaking of a card that also I feel people should be maxing out on, Demolition Dragons. So, on Vanguard, if he hits, you draw a card, which is a pretty good skill to have. It means going second isn't a complete loss. You can swing, hit, get a card, and if they don't let it hit, that means they A, lost a card of their hand, and 2, they don't have a counterblast for their next turn, and very few decks actually have a play on the turn 2 which doesn't use counterblast. So in a sense, you're CB denying them. Or you can also ride this, call this, and now you swing with this. If it hits, you get a draw, and if they hit a defensive trigger, then oh well, you still got the draw. If it doesn't hit, then you can just swing with this instead and still force out either another card of their hand, or they take this hit. If you've put a trigger on this, then it's even better. So in addition to that, being an unconditional, well not unconditional, but being a really easy to achieve 11k booster means you can hit for some pretty good numbers. Throw this behind Death Sight that's used its on-ride skill, an on-call skill, and that's a 28 line, which is magic number versus force. This boosting a Reckless Dragon or a Detonic Stinger Dragon is a 23, which is a magic number against force. This boosting Thunderstorm Dragoon is a 25, which might not seem like an impressive number at first. However, 25 means that a Force Grade 2 cannot simply use a crit to block it. No, they have to actually use a heal or a crit and a Grade 1 to block this line. You can also hit Novel Vague for the magic number as well, meaning they have to actually use a crit to block. And this boosting your Vanguard means you can swing for 23 on the first attack. Therefore, Force Vanguards simply cannot throw a crit down and say 2 pass. Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah, your opponent would just have to throw, Force Vanguard, because a Force Grade 3 could just simply throw a heal down and say no guard, no hit. But now, this boosting a Stinger, a Drill Dragon, can actually force your opponent to go, oh, I need more than just a heal trigger to block this line. So, there's that. You can throw it on Axel as a 21 attacker too. And then for the last Grade 3 and Grade 1s, I'm playing 3 copies of Ricky. All the other Grade 1s in this deck suck, so I'm not playing them. You might have noticed Narukami has a lot of good Grade 2s and Grade 3s. So rather than play bad cards such as Regina or incredibly situational cards such as Helena, yes I know, I'm saying that but despite having this, but this is free and Helena requires you to like bend over backwards to get this counter charge off. I'm just not playing them, and instead I'm only playing the good grade ones. So Ricky can allow you to swap your opponent's front row and back row units around, and also get 3k. Now a mistake that people seem to think is that this allows you to shuffle your opponent's board around or move units that are on Axel circles to the back row. No, you cannot do that. Go watch W Slasher's set 3 rulings video, because reading cards is hard tag and such forth. Like, go watch that video without all the bullshit, and he will actually tell you you cannot use Ricky to push units on the Axel circle to the back row, because there is nothing in the same column as those to swap. All it can do, let's just set up this board here. So all I can do is just call this Soul Blast, swap these 2 around. That's what he does. He doesn't allow you to move these to the back or pull these up to the front. It doesn't work like that. Like, it's pretty straightforward, but I mean, I'm sorry, but like, I've seen people get this effect wrong so much, and that is not how it works. In any case, Ricky is used to just pull things up from the front to the back so you can get rid of them and try and make your Drill Dragon a bit cheaper. Otherwise, though, when Wave 2 comes around, this will probably be the first Grade 1 that I cut from the deck. It's okay, but I'm not too sad to see him only at 3 in the deck, especially since I've got Domineering Wyvern and what's his name? Duress Clapdragon as cards that also do his job, but also don't cost me my much needed soul. There we go. Then for the triggers, I'm playing 5 fronts, 5 draws. Just pretend these are draw PGs. 4 heals and 2 crits. So the 2 crits, and then like, this is just something I'm borrowing from some Murakuma lists I've seen, where even though you're playing a more front-heavy lineup, because we're in a format where Protector are the two most played decks, therefore you kind of want to have triggers that aid in that. Like, fronts are really good against decks like Oracle, Think Tank, and Angels, especially in a best of 1 setting, whereas in a best of 3 setting, crits are more useful, or in a force heavy setting, then yeah, these are a bit better. But I'm playing just a couple of these because if your opponent sees even just one of these things, they become very weary of no guarding your Vanguard, even though you're playing more force triggers and more front triggers. So they'll actually try and like defend against Drill Dragon, especially if you broke road it. And yeah, it's just more cards in your opponent's hand. So it's more of a psychological thing. Like, if your opponent thinks you're playing strictly fronts, they're gonna feel way more comfortable no guarding your Vanguard, and that's when you just flip the crit on them. Yes, I know only 2 crits seems really janky, but I've noticed that even when I run a card at 1, I still somehow end up drawing it. AKA when I ran only 1 Vermilion in here, I always opened with the damn thing. So that's it for the deck. Yeah, this went about as long as I thought it'd be. So yeah, this list is subject to change. I will probably tweak it a little bit more by the time the actual deck drops over here. I don't know if I want to max rarity it though. It's tempting, but probably too much of a price money sink in order to do that, especially given how expensive the foil crit and heal triggers are from the trial deck. But yeah, as far as like this deck goes though, if you're looking to play an Axel deck that's not Murakumo and you don't like the RNG aspect of Great Nature, then I highly recommend Narukami, because they're easily the they're either the second or third best Axel deck in the game right now, and which is saying something considering how Gold Paladin has 2 set support and yet it's still really janky. So that's all for now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, this is Booster9, jacking out.